these initial things. Yeah? I want to briefly give the frame. So why am I doing this? I'm interested in bringing ideas to life. To me, this is an idea, namely very specifically the idea that Haifa, Planeteer, and others can receive funding together for something that has the working title RegenOS, where there's enough overlaps that significant parts of Haifa, significant parts of Planeteer receive funding. Okay. In conversations that I've had, I've gotten the impression that there's different ideas of how post-capitalist funding works like. Some were fine with philanthropy, some were fine with something else, dual systems, etc. So the intention was to kind of like get on this board for now, what are the different leaders and their organizations, and then what their current intentions are for funding and what is important to them. Okay. And then from this, we might figure out a financial coherence. Mm-hmm. Even though the things of how you are currently thinking of doing it might not be directly compatible, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Yeah? Cool.
Amazing. Yeah.
So
happy to start with what we are doing in the Haifa context.
Yes.
What we want to expand to this coalition.
Alex Haifa. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what we are launching really soon, and that's before December, as in this period from now to December. What we want to do is to bring in different types of investors, different archetypes of investors, from benefactors to family offices, VCs, impact investors, together, using Haifa to create their own space, and using Haifa to create what we've called the problem space, as in the investable space, which is a coalition between these different players. And what we want to illustrate, and that's more like a training program, to show them the possibilities of the new technologies, etc., is to say, okay, we have these problem spaces identified, whether it is renewable energy, biodiversity, ocean, and really listing all the projects that we have. And of course we have tech, right? Tech, which is an important aspect. And in my mind, this group is tech, right? It's what we propose to investors to invest in to support the infrastructure of this change. So I see Coherence inside. I see Planeteer, maybe ThinkIt as well. So really expanding. So expanding the possibilities, saying we have this coalition of tech, people who are and platforms that are willing to receive funding. Mm-hmm. Now come together, different types of investors, play with the tool and these possibilities, and you are able now to deploy capital transparently using the Haifa platform as well, to this problem space. And then the coalition that we have here will decide how to will be a coalition as well, like a space with different spaces inside, if you see what I'm saying. And we will say, okay, so Haifa needs to do this, Coherence needs to do that, Planeteer, etc. So we split the budget, through proposals, and we say, okay, that's how we operate. So X for you, X for you, X for you. And then we bring this solution, right, and we show to the investor the impact we can create by exposing our story, ambition, everything. So I think you get the point. So yeah, so that's cool. That's our immediate action, and that's for us the top priority use case called ecosystem investing, ecosystemic finance, And we have one Haifa member who is doing a PhD on this topic, ecosystem finance, who has a network of finances.
Is it the lady in Australia?
Kate Bennett, yeah.
I think I had a call.
She's nice. Huh?
Yeah, I met her on yours.
She's really smart. And we are partnering also, and I finished there, with Earth Collective, which is an organization that connects investors with projects, and what they do with their tech is that they help investors define their mandate, in a way that corresponds to our intent, and startups projects to define their pitch, right? But in a really structured way, that investors will understand, etc. So it's a translation, if you like, of what the project, the interest of the project for investors, and they match make at the beginning, of course, because there will be a dozen of investor or 20 if we are successful, it will be a small number, so we can do this matchmaking manually, but the idea is to ramp up and to have this flow of resources being redirected from degenerative to regenerative, even if it's 1%, it's enough, or a fraction of a percent.
Nice. Let me try to summarize, and then maybe there's clarifying questions from Victor, you and so the kinds of people who you're thinking of are VC, impact, family offices, something else? Benefactors meaning donations.
Yeah, donations.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
it can be grants.
Okay, he said VCs, but you don't.
I do. You do?
Yeah, VCs. Yeah.
Okay, so that's a question mark. Okay, VCs are a question mark, and
I'm talking about VCs who want to do things differently.
Right.
And I have one. So I don't know if it will be successful, but there's one in Amsterdam that I'm approaching, and they are apparently willing to experiment. So
okay,
why not?
Cool. That's no longer VC for me.
No, exactly.
Okay.
So that's the new generation.
Should we park that? Yeah. Okay, so we have this, and they are. So I'm hearing two things that you are considering for investing. One is that they're investing in infrastructure tech, like there are certain problem spaces, investable spaces, and the capital will be on HIFA voted on by proposals.
Exactly.
And then there's
deployed transparently using the platform.
Right, transparency.
And deployed further in the project through a coalition space to the different projects, different parties here.
Right. And then there's a larger intention to make this like a pattern of how to invest. Okay.
Continuous flow of funding across the IFA network, across the different problem spaces that we want to solve. Energy, biodiversity, forestry.
Okay, cool.
Can I jump in with one thought here? And the camera, please follow me over to this chart here.
I think I do want to, you came after I initiated I just want to make sure that you get a chance to bring your points, and then I think I would love to open it.
Sure.
Yeah, okay.
I'll wait here.
Perfect, thank you. Is that fine if you continue? Yeah?
Yes, sure.
Okay, so we have Mohammed from Planeteer, and I'm curious about what does this look like for you? Not the broader patterns, but for the next phase of Planeteer, who are you looking for to invest, and what are they investing in?
Yeah, maybe I can give a general kind of landscape, because your question was how's funding working at the moment, right? And so we are
Sorry, for the next stage.
For the next stage, yes. Is it okay? Yes. So we are taking an ecosystem approach, which is to say we ourselves are open to running multiple legal entities. I'm just taking this to a structural level. So Planeteer is indeed at the moment a project that is running under our non-profit organization, which is Berlin-based. That non-profit is able to receive philanthropic means, donations. So we work with family offices, philanthropies, private donations. That's one element. We also are running a for-profit software company that is called ThinkIt, and ThinkIt has been and will be also for the next stage funding part of Planeteer. So we have a regular service level business model. We're going also into SaaS subscriptions, and we since the ownership of the company is primarily with the founders, we get to decide where the funding is being used, and we have been investing in Planeteer ourselves. So that has been, and will be still a funding stream for Planeteer. We're now exploring also the incorporation of a new entity that would essentially make it possible for investors. So here we're talking impact investors, also family offices, whoever is taking equity is basically making equity investments. That can still include grants, but just for the sake of clarity, that entity would be able to also offer shares. And the way this would work is that people could be signing convertible notes, for instance, and these convertible notes would be translated later on into Planeteer tokens. And without now going into the details of this, at the moment we are preparing this at the level of governance tokens. And I think it's also important here just to mention, since we also talk governance, that many of these crucial decisions later on cannot be, there's not more weight just because you invest more money. So certain decisions will be soul based. One person has one essentially. But this is kind of the macro level view of this. And we also have, coming from the software tree, the technology company, we are in the midst of incorporating another entity that is pursuing a technology in the field of sovereign data exchange. And so that entity is also going to focus on this with an independent team. And this team is, this is also going to be incorporated as a for-profit company. However, we are currently looking for ways to turn this into a steward-owned company, or immediately put it under a foundation. Which is also, again, to say that the idea is that the business success of this entity, looking at what we call CaaS, Connector as a Service revenues, since we're now talking about a new data economy, could in the future provide percentages of the revenue or profit, I mean this is to be decided, directly to the foundation or collective fund.
Right.
Yes. I think these were all elements, and maybe the last bit, we are actively working on a collective fund, so the naming, which is Planeteer's way of channeling captured value into a collective fund that would make it possible for projects, ventures as part of the Planeteer ecosystem to then receive funding. And we can, if you're interested later, talk about what are these value captures, what are these revenue streams, how do they come about, but that's also something I just wanted to mention. What we don't have yet, and I think that's just relevant for the conversation, is we don't have an infrastructure set up to decide upon how these funds will be distributed, the governance, and this is also where we are really intent on exploring with Haifa, how we could eventually bring this to life without ourselves having to reinvent it, since the team is doing an amazing job at this.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Do I need to recap this? I think this was clear enough to me, at least. Multiple entities, and they have different purposes.
All share one shared purpose, I would say, or one shared vision, but different structures and different business models.
Right, and we currently, so I'm gonna repeat it, currently have an NP, there's ThinkIt. ThinkIt will also, there's the sovereign data, which is also a for-profit or something that is providing a technical service, and that might be coming to a foundation, might be a for-profit. We have a shares-based model that with government's tokens, one person, one vote, and a collective fund that can feed into the ecosystem, though not necessarily into these.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. We're looking at family offices, philanthropy initially, and for now, impact investing for this as a new addition, quote unquote.
Yes.
Okay. Alrighty. So we have 1, 2. Do you wanna? Sure.
Coherence is very simple, since it's years behind everybody. It's just, let's be honest, it's an idea with a quick MVP this spring.
Okay.
However, I really see Coherence as a dual-use technology, and right now, I would like to go for more standard structure funding.
Okay. Which means
company standard funding, with the hope being that a family emerges here and I'm not having to fundraise by myself. I'm doing it, so I'm here in search of family. But I'm really looking for a family that's got this 1 billion users, we're going to go for a big we're going to get ourselves to a big fundraise within a plannable timeline. And for me, from what I understand of the world of finance, the only way to get that for software projects is to have access to standard style funding.
Right. Anything else to add? Okay. To recap, dual use conventional funding is fine. I imagine that much like Planeteer, impact investing is also fine.
Impact investing is great, but I don't want to get stuck in the ghetto of impact.
Right, okay. And I imagine, I'm not sure, yeah, there's also impact investing here. Just to see, there's one overlap. Cool. I'm curious if was that helpful for you and for you specifically?
Yep.
Yeah? Okay, cool, wonderful. I feel a little bit like my job is done, and I'm very happy to pass it on to you to explain this. Let me sit
One
down.
more thought what you just said. If we go the classic route of funding, that means we need to have a valuation for A, for J, for V, for M. Add that together, maybe multiply, but probably adding. That's what we go out and seek some funding, right?
Yes.
The problem is this is really difficult for us because we don't have the evidence yet, or some of us have evidence, others not. And the business models here really work, right? The combination of that could be a very powerful story to say this is a very strong business model because it's a multiplier effect really between all of these entities here. Right?
Let's just be clear. To be clear, I don't know if it's possible. I'm out here to play with the ideas to see what is possible. But fundamentally, my worry is that the impact pool or philanthropy is not going to get us to 1 billion users. And it's going to be, like crowdfunding like Kalela wants. It's a limited pool. Impact, it's also like, it's what percentage of global finance is impact? And most of what's impact in global finance is going to regen ag and kind of more ecological type of projects. So impact software is not a category as far as I know. So it might be a great place to start, but I think going to run out. I think you're going to struggle to raise 50 million or 100 million when you get to needing that from that pool.
Our strategy, as I was saying, is to combine. It's a blended finance strategy, right?
So then,
everybody
exactly.
plays a role. So the benefactor might be a small part. There's also public funding, grants, so we can really see the entire spectrum. Put all of these people into a coalition space to solve a specific problem and see what are the interactions between them, right? So, and that's also a really good experiment for IFA itself, because we can see, how this coalition space operates, how they vote, how they deploy the capital, etc. So that just to complement what you're saying, we are not looking at only one segment. We are just, addressing the entire finance world.
Yeah, I think one question maybe to bring up, because Victor was the only one now bringing in some numbers, right? So we asked ourselves the question, okay, we're talking about funding, but what's the number that we actually need to get the snowball rolling? And I think it's for us, we come to a point where we said, we don't need to buy a big snowball. We need to have the critical mass that needs to be funded in order to then, through our business models, become self-sufficient and also regenerate or generate the funds that are needed. This is one of the reasons why, for me, we felt strongly about, and I think that is not always a rational thought. Sometimes this is simply intuition and you go with it. But I just realized the reason why we started ThinkIt in the first place was because we were able to build a technology vehicle that would create great tech and tools, but at the same time also generate funds that we ourselves need to build what we are looking to build. And still today, it's the pure profit margin of ThinkIt wouldn't be enough to fund everything on Planeteer, but it's a substantial stream, and it allowed us to move forward. I would probably at the moment put this number now, looking at in the next stage, between 2 and 5 million, not 50 or 100. And for me, that becomes much more attainable when I think about what of this piece can we, as one of the entities, generate ourselves. What of this can be provided through philanthropic funding in one of the non-profits, etc. So if I map this out, we are fundraising right now, and we have a first committed money for new entity that I shared earlier. So if I add all of these pieces up, we're getting close to the 2 to 5 million.
And what's the next step after that?
Implementing.
And so you're never going to go for funding after the 5 million? It's going to run on revenue?
Oh, that's what you mean. No, so I think we don't know. The assumption is that with the different engines that we conceptualized and also tested and that are running, we think that with 10,000 users we will generate X, with 50,000 users we will generate Y, and we've mapped what is needed to get to the different stages, and at what point will we have a surplus, a profit as a return that we can reinvest. So in a way, after the 2 to 5 million, currently from how I look at it, we might not need another additional funding round.
So if your goal is 50 to 100,000 users, I can fully see that.
Yeah.
If you're thinking of 100 million, a billion users, I think you will need, if one wants to do a project which will get to 100 million, a billion users, I think you will need to have funding rounds of 50, 100, and maybe 1.
But I think we can take it step by step, right? So
how many years until the collapse?
No.
Me neither,
Shall we-
but it's not 30.
I want to pause this here and bring you into the mix. So we've been, so far Alexander has shared about Haifa. We also have Joachim here from Haifa. Planeteer, we've had Mohammed. We now also have Joshua. I'm gonna add you, Yasha, and here as well. And Victor has shared about Coherence. Now this would be your moment, if you're open to it, to share, and you can stay if you want, to just share how Alilo, and I hope I'm writing the spelling this correctly.
Double L, one L. Switch.
Okay, perfect. One L here. Okay. How you're thinking of raising the funds and what they are being used for. So, yeah. Okay.
So,
Ask you to go on this side.
Yes, I will.
it's very interesting because Alilo comes from the word allelopathy. And it's this idea, this concept around when you have different species, they use chemical signaling to either promote the other species and make it more livable for them or less livable. And so it's like this balancing force that sits in between all the species of, let's say, a forest. And so when I think about that and I see all those names there, I think that the role that Alilo wants to play is actually between all those different organizations. We looked at money flows, value flows, but specifically money in the investment climate today. Venture capital, impact, and philanthropic, and so on, and realized that many of those, especially looking at kind of impacts and venture capital, which are really aimed at these type of high risk ventures, let's say, are all playing a game that's incompatible with the impact that we're all looking to create, because it's inherently extractive and monopolistic, ultimately. So thinking about how investors look at the world is essentially two things, right? What's the risk and what's the reward, and how do they balance?
Can I ask you what then you intend to share?
Absolutely. So we think that we can actually create a new asset class.
Okay.
That lowers risk, so that there can also be much lower reward,
and where we can have multiple types of financing coming in, ultimately not needing 100 million, from venture capital or something like that, but actually ultimately getting that mostly from the crowd, from the people that are joining, and creating a flywheel through that. But in the beginning, creating this new ecosystem venture, if you will, systemic investing asset, by taking several organizations that are aiming towards the same goal and having them work together, so it creates this non-competitive, we're calling it now, right, networked adaptive organism, where instead of having to pick the horse and that horse needing to go 100x, saying, you know what, we're all combining the horses, and if we win, then we win.
Right.
So that massively lowers the risk and can therefore lower the returns as well.
Yes. The metaphor, right, is not a unicorn, but zebras, right? Like multiple zebras.
I read about that a long time ago. I don't actually know if that's the same thing, but maybe.
That's more or less zebras. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yes,
And-
the fires come.
Water.
We have water.
That's beautiful.
Amazing.
Thank you.
There are many different ways to lower the risk, and I hear that maybe this is not the time to go into all the different details, but it's a completely different mindset of looking at this problem and creating that different asset class that speaks the language of investors to get there by combining the projects essentially.
Right. And just to double check, so it's crowdsourced in the flywheel of crowdsourcing.
So the idea is that we can start with part philanthropy, part this new asset class.
Okay. And who does the new asset class speak to?
Sorry.
Who invest into the new asset class?
So it's so far we've been able to speak to mostly people that are individually wealthy. Ultimately, once we are a little bit further in our proof points, which lowers the risk even more, we think we can go to family offices.
Okay.
Especially, where the next generation is getting more of a voice. I know a lot of the capital is now moving into the hands of women, and so there's this massive opportunity. But for the amount of capital that they need to move, even when it's more focused on, let's say, impact, it requires more proof points. So it's a step-by-step process to get there. So we're starting with the individual wealthy people, get them on board because they want to see these types of impacts, and are willing to take the risk because it's a very small portion of their portfolio, and then slowly move into the larger holders, ultimately going to even pension funds.
Okay. I'm gonna try to summarize what you just said. I'm hearing 3 steps, right? First is there's like wealthy crowdfunding, more or less, or with wealthy individuals. Then, if you are investing into the new, and at the second stage, there's a proven new asset class that can then speak to family offices. And then finally, it is so proven that even pension funds would be willing to.
Yeah, and then step 4 is actual crowdfunding. So once you have 1 million people, a couple of million people there that are not just consuming, but they're actually active members of the association of the network of the now. They're able to even by just doing like $10 a month. Can have a massive impact in terms of financial capital.
Wonderful. And this is like who invests, and what they're investing in is both a Lila's substrate and the zebra herd.
So again, Alilo is the incubator, and so the substrate that's there on the board, the lowest one is the first now, and I think that each layer is 1 or more nows, where around a specific topic, organizations come together. to try to move non-financial impact metrics. So I think that one way that we can actually change the game for these investors is create these impact certificates where we measure first, second, and third order effects and issue those so that they can actually start competing on those impact metrics instead of on the financial returns, which is what's happening nowadays. Which also enhances the ability for them to collaborate, which is a major problem, especially around family offices. They can't really find ways to collaborate on specific ventures because they're all trying to outcompete each other on returns.
Okay. Let me try to reframe that. There's one investing into the incubator and potentially the existing first now, and there's also an intention to let this capital flow in between these different other organizations.
So I would say that the now is a vehicle for it to spread in between organizations.
Perfect.
Right. And so the now is the first one, and the second one, and the third one, and the Lilo is essentially just brokering those connections as it goes into these different nows.
Perfect. Thank you. Is that a good representation?
Yeah.
Okay. Good enough. Yeah. Wonderful. I think I'm now at the point where we have Haifa now, we have Planeteer, we have the Lilo. Again, I have a sense. I feel. Perfect. Here we go.
If I may add something on that,
please.
Because obviously I don't know what.
Is it okay that you were on the stack? Yeah, please.
Yeah.
He wanted to go first, man. Go ahead.
If that was the plan,
earlier.
I came late. You go. Yeah.
I think it's yours.
Yeah. Cool. I would first have one question still to Ruben, because you talk about the nows, right? So then my question, and we don't have to answer this now, but it's like, what defines a now, right? Like, is one of these other ventures a now, or what are the conditions, so to say, to be a now in order to be part of a joint fundraise, right? Or we're talking about, okay, this is now a fundraise for Alilo and the nows, but this is still kind of an ecosystem in itself.
Yeah, so I think that Planeteer could become a now, or spearheading a now. And you can say, okay, we're going to do this alone, and all the others are more like subcontracting organizations. Or you could say, well, actually, what we're doing is close enough to Haifa that we're actually going to have it now together, because that makes more sense, right? Because you are not doing a lot of the governance things that they need, but when you want to really support these projects, that makes a lot of sense to join in, and there might be a few others as well that you want to do together. But ultimately, because if you're building on that lower substrate, you have instant compatibility. So you can build a product that is so intertwined that for users it might not even be very subtle.
Okay, then for Planeteer, I mean, what I read up there is that Mohammed has already shared where money is going into, etc. I also see, this is just what came up for me, of like the role I can see Planeteer playing in all of this. Is really on this, I mean, we call it sometimes ecosystem orchestration on a more human level also, in bringing diverse groups of people together, and I believe that when I'm looking at funding, I see at least two approaches that can also be deployed in parallel.
I'll briefly recap what we've talked about before. Currently, there's an NPO and ThinkIt, and there's three other things that Mohammed has shared that you're intending to do: a sovereign data thing, a shares-based governance Planeteer token, and a collective fund. So, can you reference that in your continuation of speech?
So I mean, when we look at the ecosystem as such, and right now our name for us is Planeteer, but I think it's the same that other people give different names to. So, but yeah, there is the element of you have a for-profit entity that is engaged in the marketplace, so to say, right, in the market, that is fully owned by a non-profit. So it cannot be owned by investors or so. And that non-profit is governed in a decentralized way, which doesn't have to mean Web3, but in a way where governance is with the many, not the few. and then, this I think is what we mean with token. And then we see a huge opportunity, which for me at least, I think for Mohammed, these things sometimes are clear or visible earlier. But for me, the sovereign data sharing aspect became a lot more clear when we started conversing with Vincent, with Ruben. With Ruben and the Now, because I really could see how between what Planeteer is doing and what ThinkIt is doing until here, the Now kind of felt like, okay, wow, there's an element that suddenly brings these things together. And where I can see a really strong kind of trio in a way, with the different expertise levels we have and the experience we have to create that, the infrastructure or like the backend for sovereign data, data sovereignty and the exchange of that. Then the collective fund is a central piece for us, which is able to fund Planeteer and other impact or regenerative initiatives.
It is also for Planeteer itself.
So I think it's important to distinguish that the collective fund could, basically on a structural level, fund other entities. It doesn't have to be only self-funding. It's where all captured value from the ecosystemic approach goes into, and where the community, the people, by means of votes, tokens, etc., can decide upon where this funding should go.
Okay, and it could go to Planeteer itself. It could go to ThinkIt. Okay, good to know. Okay.
And we can. I think it really depends on when is this fund being set up, so to say, right? I mean, we're now raising funds, and we could, even without having an official fund, we could say, okay, there is a joint fundraising, and we have these different initiatives that are now fundraising together. They are still not, directly connected through, contracts, but maybe through a manifesto and through the conversations we're having here in the Coherence. But we could still say, okay, hey, overall these organizations are in need of, what did we say yesterday, 10 million, right? Now you as an investor get to decide if you want to deploy capital, how much do you want to deploy into each organization? Because maybe I'm bringing an investor in that says, I love what Planeteer is doing, I love what Alilo is doing, I'm not so much interested in Coherence and Haifa, I don't see it. Okay, cool, you deploy your capital to these two. There might be an investor that I'm bringing that says, cool, Planeteer is nice, I don't believe in it so much, I really believe in the Haifa element, so my money will be deployed into Haifa. And I think it's a really strong market mechanism to also test, how do our value propositions resonate with investors in the marketplace. And in the end, it doesn't, if by the end of this joint fundraising, I've brought in 100 investors and 99 of them gave their money to all your organizations and none to mine, well, that's a strong signal that maybe what I'm trying to do is not yet resonating. But in the process of so doing, I might find exactly that language or that thing that is resonating.
I think I want to pause you right there, because this, I think, touches on something that I've been wondering about, how much this is not exactly competition, but it sounds, there's something here that I'm curious, if there were such a situation that we would have a collective fund and the money would go to the other organizations, how would you as Haifa feel about that? And how would you, you're on his line more or less?
Yeah.
Okay. How would Alilo feel about this?
For us, you were not here when I presented the approach, but it's like purely transparent and distributed by the coalition itself. As in, what we are doing is a pilot, bringing all sorts of investors together, and we want to test, the deployment of capital using the Haifa platform, and there would be a coalition space, right, where our organizations will be represented. And this money goes to the coalition space, and then we distribute, the funding, the most efficiently. Right?
Yeah. And it seems as if let's say this is the coalition space, and then within that there is Haifa,
exactly.
there is Alilo, there's
That's
Planeteer.
the capability that we have on the platform.
Right. Right. And so Jay mentioned like we're here in the mind, right? And there's I think something about the heart that I want to bring in right now in this moment.
Yes.
Namely, how would we feel if, exactly like you said, there's 100 investors who invest into, from Planeteer's perspective, I think you just made that case. For Haifa, how would it feel if 99 of these investors would go to Alilo and Planeteer and only want Haifa?
Completely fine with us. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Alilo?
So I think that it would kind of be a missed opportunity, and I think we probably did something wrong. Because I respect all the projects here, and including Alilo and the Now is in the same boat. In many ways, what we're doing is unproven. We have yet to find the product market fit. That enables a scale. Obviously, we're somewhere and we have some users maybe and whatnot. And at least my personal thesis is that in order to really get there, we must collaborate. We must work together, and it's these type of visions that you cannot put in the hands of investors, because the investors they don't have to. They think about risk and reward. So it is our intelligence and our ability to choose to collaborate that needs to direct that that flow of capital.
Can I add to that
something?
as well? Go. I strongly resonate with that because I think all of us have done fundraising. If I'm just putting myself into the experience of sitting in front of people, what I'm sharing is the most important thing for me that I feel is what affects my family, what affects my group, my community, how I believe we create a new way, because that old way in one way or another is destructive in some way. Otherwise I wouldn't feel how I feel. Like that's how I feel when I speak with people, because I tune into that feeling. And so for me it's hard to imagine that I would speak and would say, join us. I can't tell you much about the other projects. I cannot feel on that level. First, I want to sit and become one, to feel that we have actually put our minds and hearts together, have a coherence where I say, wow, I had not at all realized this before, but actually if we ourselves make this boat loose and we get the other two boats and we bring the people there and we make a plan together, that I can see will work. And so when I then speak with an investor, I can tell them why I believe that it works. And that is what will be how people can be part of a movement, because they will feel it and they will want to move. And money is just money, Somebody will bring apples, others will bring a spear, somebody else will bring djembe, it doesn't matter. But the point is, these investors we're speaking about, they're not on the other side. They're on our side. So we speak with them in the same way as we speak right now in the circle.
Do you want to go next?
Adding to what you said, in order to make this happen, that we are a coalition, a true coalition, and we have to collaborate to solve the problem. This needs a shell construct, which is exactly the idea of the regenerative operating system, right? If we're presenting that as the solution that we need to find investors for, it's different than saying this and this and this individually are the solutions, right?
So Region OS is here, right?
That's right.
Okay.
So that's the interface. Could be the region OS funding hub, coalition space, whatever you want to call it. But it's one entity, right? And you invest in that entity.
Capital deployment vehicle.
Right. It's also, I think, unlikely that an investor will understand all of the different companies that are in this coalition space, right? They don't want to research this and this and this and then decide which one would I invest in. Can happen, of course, if you have direct investors, you can avoid that. They just go in and give the funding, outside the system that we're building. But other than that, I think that would be go ahead.
So I want to add a little bit of extra detail to this, because if we go and try to, get investors to even understand this picture, just their risk assessment will be huge, and in 20 years they won't really even, have done the calculations. But what we can do is say, okay, the coordination layer is something that actually has a very clear, single, market, go-to-market, and product description, even though we all need to actually be there to do that. And it's the same for many of those layers. So this is when I think about, there's an ecosystem. And in the ecosystems, there's the coalitions, as you call it. We're calling it nows. And then the nows consist of, these different organizations that are, I think, in some ways, as you go deeper and deeper, are merging, are creating an interdependence, as Primavera Filipa talks about, which is such a necessary thing. And so investors should be able to pick and choose either a coalition or say, we go and invest in the fund, and the fund decides which coalitions will get what part based on the intimate knowledge of the ecosystem.
I'll try to represent it, and then I'll let you know. So this is version 1, or at least version, Joachim, this is version Haifa for now, okay? And version Ruben is what I'm hearing right now, and this is just for now, just for now. This is still region OS, right? The big thing is still region OS. So we still have region OS here, and then there's different nows, of different coordination layer aspects. And then what I'm hearing is that we have here the different, so we have here Alilo, Haifa, Planeteer, and Planeteer might go to this, and this, and this, those three. Haifa might go to those two, and Alilo might go to this one and this one. And then the investors can choose this one and this one. Did I get that right?
Approximately, yes.
Okay.
And then there's the fund, right, on top of that. Okay.
And this here, they can also invest in this?
They can invest in a fund that decides to distribute
So here, there's one here. And this is proportional, like as it.
So there will be intelligence in the fund's managers or decision-making process that is privy to detailed information on the ecosystem and the nows that investors just won't have, and so they'll be able to more smartly distribute the funds and lower risk and increase therefore rewards.
Yes?
And I think what's really important is to stay at the problem space, the domain, and I think you're saying that. So some investors will be really interested in sovereign identity, right? And they will go, all in into this sub-bubble here on sovereign identity. Some others on governance, etc. So there's these domain layers, right, or community building, etc. But then there's this overarching coalition to solve the problem of the regeneration of our planet, right? So depending on the type of investor, whether they are benefactors or VCs, they will choose to be really precise or more broad, because they believe that we can organize ourselves, the deployment of capital. And the good thing is that with the IFA platform, it's all transparent, so they can follow the flow of their investment, and they can see exactly the contributions, how it was deployed, etc., and used. So,
what I'm observing is, and this might be me projecting, so forgive me if I'm seeing it wrong, but when we talk about the investors and and that investors will not make the effort to assess, or they might feel this is too risky, so and then ditch out or so. I think that will very well happen with a lot of investors. And I wonder, this is again for us, it's like, okay, where do we want to operate from as an ecosystem? Do we want to operate from a place of concern or fear that something might not work out? Or from a place of trust that there are actually investors that feel some resonance and they will actually engage with us to try to understand better, and that they trust in something that maybe they cannot fully understand, and that there is a way for us to actually take investors with us on the journey, because we might be able to say, hey, look, we are fundraising now as a group. There is like the regional S right now is a loosely coupled construct, and we have a joint demo day once a month, one time in Amsterdam, one time in Berlin, one time in Zurich. We invite all of you here. Every venture will pitch, but part of the demo day is actually to go through an experience together where we create coherence. And what happens then is that, I mean, investors invest in the end in people. Like, they invest in us, not in our ventures. They invest in our visions, etc. And when they can feel how we are interacting with one another, and that they can feel like they can be part of that process, we're basically we're not asking for money, we're offering an invitation to become part of something bigger. And if someone doesn't want to follow that invitation, that's fine, but I have trust. There are people out there and they understand the larger story and what is happening all around this, aside from the technology, aside from the capital, that there are people who say, hey, I'm willing to put my money into this. And this might be a high net worth individual. I very much think that way. But I think there's another element to the fundraise where by sharing the story, and we're starting with this now, right? We had the story at the very top, not the very top, but the second of the Regen OS.
Over there? Right?
Over there, yeah, right. Story. And so as we're starting to share the story, you know, like we have a larger story, but then in the story we can share the story of Alilo, we can share the story of Planety and the humans behind it. What has been Ruben's path to create what he's creating now? Let's understand Ruben's background, experience, life better. In how much ever you're willing to share, right? And how much ever willing Mohammed is to share, and I am willing to share. And then say, okay, hey, and from this place, we believe that this is the right thing to do, and it's not us doing it, it's being done through us in a way, right? It just wants to be created, that's why it's happening all over in the field. And if an investor says, I feel resonance, will they at least click on the episode where they can spend an hour and get deeper into Ruben's story?
Yes.
And if they're not willing to invest that time, then they're not the right funder for us. And yeah, that's how I would go about it.
Let me check if I correctly see that what you just shared is in alignment with this, and that there could be, right? So this could be the ID could be demoed in Zurich, right? The Swiss are very good at this, for example. And governance could be done in whatever, Belgium, right? Because the EU is there, right? Something like this, yeah?
Yeah, I think what I'm sensing is, you know, like with this first, like I trust that I don't need to be in control to decide where the money is flowing. I can say this is the money that would help us to build the next version. If 100 investors, coming back to that point, right, can I leave that decision making to them? And I'm open if we overall feel that the other approach is better. But if I say, okay, now 100 investors are investing in your 3 projects and not in mine, can I be in trust that you believe my project is valuable enough that you will take some of your money and put it into my venture? Because then it doesn't matter if the investors don't believe in it, as long as we believe in it.
Right. And I think this is a question that goes to you. Right?
So I love this, and I think it's a yes and. Right? We need to go into a world where the relationship becomes central in everything that we do, including where the money comes from. Right? That's been kind of this abstraction has been the problem everywhere. However, the reality is right now that we only need a very, very small amount of money. And so the people that have the money only have very little time to spend on each project as they're evaluating it. So the top of the funnel is, essentially probably 1 minute to look at the deck before they go further. And so we need to be realistic. Now, I think that there's definitely people that we can meet in these type of places, and so it is certainly true that we can do that. And also, if we want to scale when we're small, and once we have scale, we also need more scale. So then the problem is that we don't have the time to do that. We also need that other part as well to add to. But these investors that you speak of, and when we can build those relationships, can be great ambassadors to influence those others.
You go first.
So yes, investors invest in people, but first they invest in narratives. AI is a thing. Okay, give me some of that AI stuff, and then I find a company, people, and all of this. So that's why Regen OS or whatever, this umbrella, creating a shared narrative is what I think will drive a lot of this, right? You know, if we manage to create a shared narrative this is a piece of region OS or whatever, then the investor will open it, and it's probably less than 1 minute. Say, oh, this is in the region OS space. I don't have anything in that space yet. My 3 friends said that they've in it. Let me see if this is a company in that narrative that I want to invest. I got some AI, I got some SaaS, I got some region ag, I got some, I don't know. I don't have any region OS yet in my portfolio. Let me add some of that to my portfolio. So that's why I think this narrative creating a shared narrative that we can all show ourselves to belong to. And then it also becomes a much bigger thing, right? Because it's like, oh, there's 50 companies in this region OS thing. It's a thing, right? So that's what. Sorry?
It gives credibility and
exactly.
weight.
Exactly. It's like, wow. It's like I might not understand it, but there's clearly motion and it's happening.
I wanted to say from what you've said earlier that that's also the plan, so we can have a joint plan together to onboard the investors into these new models, right? So we're starting designing it as a 12-week journey, workshops, etc., and it can be in person. If we see that it resonates. And the idea is to invite these different groups, different communities that are looking also at new financial models and, looking at that as well as traditional investors and benefactors, etc. So, yeah, we're completely aligned on the fact that we need to educate, we need to show what is possible, because they also need to change and transform the way they invest, So there's a high level of consciousness of the fact that I think in the finance world, on the fact that things are changing, like there's something happening, they don't really know exactly how it will play out, but if we can be the bridge, and start educating them, they can be us, right? So I'm saying them because of the current situation, but I completely agree that they should be in this type of circle without being treated differently, or
Let me try to summarize before. So I'm hearing two approaches. First approach is that, let's say your Planeteer does not get investment. There is actually a contractual obligation.
Get investment for sure. Yeah.
So
let me finish. Please, finish now. There's the model that if Planeteer would not get investment, or one of the entities that we're saying that are part of Region OS would not get investment, there's a contractual element where you have autonomy to give it to others. I think that's the first model. And the second model that I heard from you is that it will be the relationship with the investors will be such that you can approach them and say, hey, you've given us X thousands, and you trust us that we can give this to these other people who we think are good. That's what I'm hearing.
And the fact that we are
making more space.
Thank you.
The fact that we are in the same space to answer this question fully. So the fact that we are a coalition in the same space makes it really easy to deploy the capital forward, because it will be proposals, right? So you will do a proposal saying, I need 100K, and I will do another one. So it's just naturally flowing, inside the space. And if the investor is really controlling and saying, no, I really want, it's not really the right investor, because they need to trust that we know how to. Similarly to an investor investing in biodiversity, right? They need to trust that the local communities know better how to deploy the capital. So it's exactly the same.
Yeah, no, that's true as well. And I think that's why I'm totally open to see with both approaches. So like, do you want to decide, or do you want to put it into a collective structure and we decide? Because then you give people agency to say, like, maybe there's someone who wants to decide. Maybe there's someone else who says, "Hey, no, you're good with it." And I think this is where I would really, on the one hand, want to introduce a shortcut in a way, because Ruben is completely right when you say investors maybe have 1 minute to look at a deck or something. But what if we change that narrative, right? And we say, what if we look at an investor journey not through they receive a deck first, but there's a 1 minute invitation or a 2 minute invitation that they watch, or so there's something where you create resonance, you know, and based on that 2 minute video or something, you know, and the story we're starting to share, the first chapter of the story is 2 minutes long, second chapter of the story is 10 minutes long, and you really go like step by step, and see, you know, like who is curious to see more. And if we can expand our view of what an investor is, I mean, we have 8 billion people on the planet. There are so many people out there that have 5,000 or 10,000 euros spare because they work in really good corporate jobs. They don't really find meaning in their jobs. But what they have is they have, for their terms, an abundance of capital. Like, I have good friends of mine, they earn €500,000 at Google, and they say, yeah, it's a golden cage, you know, like I don't really want to get out of it because I don't even know if another job that I would find would be better, but it's also not the job that is fulfilling me. If I'm now offering this person to say, you can put 10,000 into this, and that person is doing it because they say, okay, I might not get it fully, but I trust you, Yosha, right? There are so many people out there that could resonate with that story and with us because we're putting a light on the individuals behind it. And then again, it's all about trust. Do they trust us that we're genuine about what we do and that their money is in good hands with us? And there's examples out there, Giving What We Can. I don't know if you're familiar with it. Giving What We Can is one of the biggest pledging organizations. They basically introduce between 1 and 10% pledge. So you can pledge between 1 and 10% of your income to charitable activities. So donation, like you do not get any return on that money. And it's an ongoing commitment year by year. It's voluntary, so you don't have to, they will not control you and say, now show me your tax return, etc. Right? But basically you say, on an ongoing basis, I'm dedicating that money to that. And you can decide, I can decide in which projects this is flowing. So, and they've moved more than 300 million over the last few years. So just looking at the sheer size of what's possible there with just one organization, and that's purely kind of NGOs, you know. Now we say, okay, if you invest and you put your pledge into this, and you become part of a larger community, and you can see the other members in this community, and this is what we see also Planeteer as a platform doing. And you can see, okay, like, what did I pledge my money to? What are the other pledges in this organization? And you can create a community of pledgers. But we're saying, hey, of all these ventures that are now receiving capital, from our income, we're also pledging 10% back into the fund. You know, so it really becomes a regenerative flywheel. And we can do this with these initial organizations first, but we're also over time allowing a mechanism where everybody could bring a project in and say, hey, I would love to create this project, and here's why I believe I can pull this off. And then the community can look at this and say, hey, maybe I want to now not give the money to Planeteer, but I want to give the money to this super cool art project because I really believe in art, you know. And I know I might not get a return back on it, but if that project is successful, it can also contribute 10% back. You know, now we have a super cool art project, and we can say, okay, because we want this art project to be successful because it's part of our community, well, let's give it some visibility, give it a stage, give it some reach. And suddenly someone says, oh, this is actually cool art. I'm willing to pay $1 million for this art. 10% goes back into the fund. So we just expand this from like only looking at technology or business into something wider. And I believe, there is so much potential out there for doing that.
An easy way to do this is to put a wrapper around this construct here. And that could be a legal, organizational, structural wrapper, whatever it is, that interfaces with the legacy operating system, right? With these type of investors that they can donate to this thing, you know. So it needs to be some kind of a charity, NGO we mentioned, or
which
nonprofit.
A couple of us have that.
So they can go directly in. Because if not, otherwise we require this money distribution license thing, you know. If we suddenly, you know, to in order even legally to do that, you know, distribute that, you need a license for that.
No, for sure. There should be a non-profit that is a trust that holds this fund.
That's right. Yeah. So.
And then you can put it into anything essentially.
Right. But the idea is, you know, that these smaller funds are sitting in thousands of places, right? and they are much easier to talk to also, right? And they want an easy way to contribute and to earn returns. That's it.
And another way of sorry.
No, I'm happy to wait. It's not. Okay, well, I love everything that you said. We're 100% on the same page. This is, I call it, crowd investment. But I wanted to quickly respond to something that you said earlier, because I want to highlight that it's not so easy to just have, a group of organizations together and just have them say, okay, well, we want to do this, we want to do that. And then people execute. We've seen this in the DAO space, right? There are many, many examples where this has happened, and then at the end, all the money is gone, and what value was actually created, what impact was actually achieved. So I just want to highlight that there's obviously something missing there that we need to really make part of the DNA of these coalitions. To make sure that money goes towards the thing that creates the impact that was promised as people put in the money.
Sure. So for me, that's the coalition space, a trusted space, right, between our organizations. So it's not like a big space with thousands of people, and when you compare it to the DAO, for example. I think, yes, we can define the rules and the value system that we want to follow together, and also orchestrate the roadmap together. So seeing what is priority for the coalition and what will indeed create the maximum impact, as the operating system, right? As a so I don't know if I respond to your point, but it's agreement between us, but it's not like a contract that we sign up front and then we follow the rule. It will evolve, it will be a living coalition from my point of view.
Mm-hmm. For me, maybe something that comes up on this point is, and it's a perspective I haven't fully. I haven't found my peace with. That's also why I'm sharing it to hear how you all feel about it. Is when we speak about investments, it's arguable that there are skill sets that people can have to because of their experience and their work. Some have worked in energy and in biospheres and other ways that are, say, more trained to assess whether a project or not can work. And so I see these people as possible ambassadors or representatives, or in a way you have that function also in what is called an investment committee, right? And I wonder in what way what we're talking about as a community can bring forth these roles of representatives, or in a way an investment committee that and I want to be conscious and careful, because I think that in the last couple of decades, these investment committees, as we know them, are the leading cause for the destruction of the biospheres. If we look at across the board in the private sector, these people, these decision makers, have also decided upon things that have taken life away. And so now for me, it's a really important role that emerges in our community to say, who do we trust as a community to take this role of sort of channelers of our voices, because why there should always, that's my belief, be an option for every individual to decide upon where they would like to invest in. There should also be an option for everyone to say, I would like to side with a person that I trust because I've spent 6 years with them, and I know when it comes to regenerating degraded soil, I really trust them. And so I would like to delegate my token or whatever it is as a decision making. And I feel that we as a community also have the responsibility to keep an eye out for these investments to be what's the right word? Safeguarded and regenerative. So they shall be self-sufficient as much as we can, and at the same time they shall not be more destructive. They shall not be destructive. And so it's that balance. I think we really have an opportunity to put thinking into this role, and when crafted well, it can really help us as organizations as well as the wider community that will come in to make the right investment decisions. That's why I wanted to bring it up.
I want to briefly try to integrate that. Am I saying this correctly, that the investment committee has a large overlap with the managed fund?
Not in my perspective, because these type of decisions need to be made within the coalition, right? If the coalition is going for some impact, right, whatever that impact is, regreening a certain area, digital sovereignty for all, or whatever that is, then it is non-trivial to figure out what needs to be done. And if you do that, just by everyone in the now, whatever we were calling that, democratically coming to that decision, it won't work. If it's top down, it's likely to become extracted. And so there needs to be an evolved social process to distribute that money with checks and balances.
So let me check if I got this right now. So there's something like, okay, there's the different nows within the larger coalition. There's an internal, so this should be part of the coalition, the ethical investment committee, and this is really the liaison to the managed fund, right? This is the main.
It's a question whether I think the investment committee is more like a metaphor, right? It's like this has worked in other areas, but we need some accountability structure for how those investment decisions are made within that local context. And that would indeed report back to.
We could elect or designate people, members, as part of the coalition that we trust, have the skills, to respect the capital. I think to really check, if the usage of the funds is rational, etc. This type of skills and views on really, it's really respecting the capital, right, and not wasting the resources.
And I think and this is so important, and I think this gets me also to this place where I haven't found my peace with, is I think everything we've learned so far in the space has to do with numbers and rational decision making. And I believe that there are members out there that might not on paper have superior skill sets or experience, but they might simply have the intuition. And I say this also as a man, because I know when I'm in this space I struggle with tapping my intuition in that way. And so I just want to invite that, because I wonder how can we think about this but also feel this structure. And there might be decisions we will take that will not come from a rational place, where we put this out and people will point fingers and say, that's not the optimal decision you can make based on all the data points that I'm seeing. And I feel that this is the true test for our community, to see whether we can, in such cases, in hard things, kind of equivalence, still trust. When there is somebody who says, and who we trust overall, all of these points might not lead to Y, but I still have the intuition that this is the right decision. And I wonder how we can get there, because this is at a community level. When this happens at an individual level out there, a person might simply say, I will invest because I feel this. But now we also talk about the community space and delegation, and I think this will be really important.
It could be a council structure, for example, where all the directions, decisions that are being made are just looked at, and there's recommendation, being made, directions, intuition, all of the dimensions that we need to look at to make sure that we use this capital in the best way possible to create the impact.
I think it's also a matter of.
So he wanted to say something for a long time.
Yeah,
still relevant?
I think that what you shared, thank you for bringing it in, because again, we need to recognize that in this conversation, we are 7 men. No woman is in here. If we look at, you're here. Exactly. I saw it. That's good.
Thanks for doing it.
Thank you for being here. And I believe that also, we need to recognize that I can't speak for all of the organizations, right? But in many of our organizations, there's a very clear dominance of the masculine. And there's a very clear dominance of also this like very mind-driven approach, even throughout this weekend, which is, I'm not judging it, I'm just recognizing it. And I think we need to find more balance in that, you know. And I, like the way we're doing that at Planeteer is by really inviting, for example, intuition in and saying, okay, can we recognize this as an as valid data point as the more rational numbers game, so to say, right? Not to say it's more important or less important, but just giving it more importance because it has been historically not valued. And there are other ways of doing that. And all of this is an experiment. But what at least my experience is in witnessing, because we're taking this approach, there's a lot of really, really incredible women coming into our space, doing fantastic things. And I think this is something that we need if we want to build a balanced world. So we had just a conversation before in the ceremony to say, how can we also, as men, empower women in these leadership roles to really exercise feminine or authentic leadership for who they are and provide the supportive structure, which brings me back, maybe we need to have these conversations because they are about structure, but then where do we leave space for the feminine, also within us, to say, okay, now how do we go about things? That's food for thought.
Yeah, thank you. You're concerned about, you know, a network that might get out of balance, right? Or attacks the wrong people, and what do we do about that? For me, it's a property of a network. There's certain design criteria that we build into the system that just wouldn't attract these kind of players. As soon as we put in a filter function, a council on top of this, you know, a group of people who have this power to override things, right, you get down the wrong track, I think. For example, with Haifa, we designed it in a way that 300 organizations joined. None of them has an inkling of extractive mentality, you know, there. Why is that? Because for us, it's because everything is is transparent, and we can see each other, we feel each other, we see what's going on. Then the same sort of adjacency needs to be there. Like in the other bubbles, there's governance. Yes, there are players here. There's and it's all related to regeneration, right? So they play in the regeneration space, right? There's finance types, regeneration, even marketing types. They also can play in a non-extractive way, right? That's the playground we need to design.
So, you know, we have the spectrum. Like we have the dreamers, we have the doers, and I think we both carry both inside of us, right? And sometimes the doers are triggered by the dreamers because it's all good intentions and it's all like vision, etc. But you're like, but nothing gets done. And that is also the reality of the regenerative space sometimes, right? Because a lot of people, because we've been so long in this conditioning towards a very dominant masculine, that right now in this time when we're trying to get away from that, we sometimes swing also to the other side. But then there's like, it's not about one person is very much in the masculine, one is very much in the feminine. But how can we come together, right? And really together act from that place. It's like, can we, as a group together, tune in to intuition and go through a process that connects us to vision and connects us to that, and share, and this is going to be a very different process than maybe this one, and it might be led by, we've had really good experiences with like women and men co-facilitating. And then we go into the execution part of it. And it might be that there are some women who are like, okay, in the execution part, you know, like we're here, we're nourishing you, and you go in the execution, and the men are executing. I think this is the beauty that we can figure out as a culture, as a community of like, how do we empower the best in one another?
Yeah. Well, I agree with everything that you said, except on the men should execute or whatever part. I mean, within the first now, the team that's looking at, you know, where should we go, is almost completely women. So yeah,
great. Happy to see it.
And that's actually also something. The way I absorbed what Yosha was saying was perhaps not necessarily have a black and white box of this is executed or not, but more the example. You might have somebody who can lead the way and can say, where are we going? who will not necessarily have to carry the barrels down the road.
Sure.
So I think that was more the point, right? And this is not about gender, but I think what I'm hearing is more on an energy space, that you might have an extreme impact on something within, whatever time, 20 minutes. We are wired to say, if you're not working 60-hour weeks, then you're not as valuable, and that's simply not true. Like if you can, if you can lead the way through clarity within moments, then you might have an incredible impact on a project without having the same role or capacity. These are all terms, but I say this because I've observed this in our organization so far. I'm observing this also in conversations that my partner is having, and I feel that we are we're cutting our wings by buying into these concepts that we simply take for valid, without actually having felt into, do they serve us? And I just wanted to offer that because it's I don't think it's a question of gender.
Yeah, and I want to hook into.
Do you want to say something?
That's okay, go ahead.
Just one sentence. I want to hook into bounties to what you said, because how do you actually reward, that 1 hour that makes a huge difference compared to somebody working for a month? And this is an open question to which we have no good answer. Just wanted to add that.
Universal basic income.
I think the retroactive public good funding is the closest one.
I think Sharon.
Thomas, yeah?
I think it's super interesting just to hear you guys talk and exchange, but I just felt called to chime in when you were reflecting back at each other this, and you brought it full circle really well, I think, this genderized version of this energetic between reflecting, like visioning, and doing and executing. And I think at the center of this, as you mentioned yourself, is the idea of like, what do we value? And there's a lot of conversations around the invisible labor that is being done, that our society is not trained to recognize, not trained to value, and that can be done, that can be expressed in many different ways. And so I think this just kind of brings up a deeper conversation that connects to a lot of different things about both like our conceptions of genders, like the energetics of like feminine and masculine energies, and the way that society has organized around that, and what it has chosen to value or not. But I do think that if we expect everyone to be a certain way, and we omit the value that their own particular nature can have, we're also, in your example, expecting them to be executor. We're not creating the scaffolding, which I believe if we're like looking at it in terms of like architecture, because it's sort of, I'm hearing we're trying to do, like architecting new systems or architecting new narratives, new identities that allow like both individuals and collective to then being able to have the space to evolve. And so I think when I talk about scaffolding, it's like all of like these different pillars, and finding how do we find true inclusion, right? It's like Einstein said, if you judge, I think, a fish by its ability to climb a tree, so I think that's like what it evoked, and whether it is from a gender perspective or from an individual perspective, how we're able to see each other without referring to our own intrinsic set of like value metrics, and then are able to be like, okay, and always see the individual for what it can provide, because like nature is not exclusive, it's inclusive, and an ecosystem understand that not everyone is the same, but that you can exchange different nutrients and different resources and information and be strong from that. So that was my
Can I ask you a question?
okay.
So, if you think about working in a team together with some that have maybe more dominant feminine, others more dominant masculine, and those that are doing things that are easily measurable, and so have more visibility maybe on that, getting paid more, which is kind of the default way that, while maybe those that either care or lift up the consciousness or bring their intuition might not be valued as such. have you seen or imagined ways that could be done differently?
Yeah, I think coming back to your point on culture, I think it comes back to culture as well, right? It's like what are we aware of? If it's not something you recognize, then it's not something that you value, then you can translate into some measurable approach and the impact that it's bringing. And to have recognition, you need to have education, to have exposure, and then these narratives, these conversations, these new architectures, these mythologies at the core, the culture, as you mentioned, and the values that it embed, would allow us to relate. Because like what mythology or storytelling does, it allows like humanity to metabolize like complex experiences and changes and create like the collective coherence, that allows us to participate and to like deal with it. And in moments of threshold, if we don't have that, then that's when this kind of incoherence and dissonance can happen, and so it has to be brought together in the space. So I think it will be from the culture of the company, and what it values and how it's able to recognize this and how it instills that into the rest so it grows. And so that shift.
Start wrapping up, so I'm not sure if you...
And then this is
okay?
like intangible, measurable things. So it's like, okay,
Question?
Yeah,
you can have different measurements for different things. There's some things that are very KPI, like metrics oriented. It's like numbers and XYZ. And others can be more like less like more emotional, psychological, thriving of the collective. It's supporting the whole. So then we had to develop like new ways of seeing.
Thank you.
And then, it is.
I know that there's one more question, and then I want to start wrapping up. And I just want to quickly say, like, I think what we have just talked about is like this in here, right? The culture within One Now, for example. That's my understanding. What we're just talking about. And I'm curious about like slowly zooming back out and closing up open questions. First, there was a question from you.
Also with next steps or something.
Perfect. Wonderful.
I was hoping that we might at some point get into a deep dive of the regenerative culture.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm quite interested in people's perspectives, lenses on that. Like, can we take the work of people like Daniel Christian Wall, regenerative cultures, and other such people in the field, and maybe propose something, an invitation to like what kind of culture we would like to see in this coalition, if we create this coalition kind of thing. And like I have a few examples I could go into, but
for now, I would like to say we have this as a potential next step. Yeah. So, wonderful. I want to invite like a closing round. It's just slow closing round, and we can. And I'm imagining there are some potentially clarifying questions between you, some open threads, or next steps. Those are the three things that I'm looking for.
Could you repeat that one more time?
Yes. So closing open threads, potentially with clarifying questions, and then the other is next steps. Are you open? Who's willing to start? And we're gonna. Yeah. Perfect.
I mean, closing open threads are something that I'm still taking from the last inputs, and also the question of Thomas that he posed, and Nesma, what Nesma was sharing. I think there's something really important, and that is indeed culture and awareness were the words that I've picked up from you. And I believe if there's no, as you said, awareness and recognition around what indeed is important and of value, then we cannot come up with a system, as you have also rightly pointed out, that what is then the approach, right? And so, in a way, for me, this regenerative culture starts within. Like and I feel for us now, the task is to really collectively create, nourish, evolve this without now me having the tactical point-by-point plan of what that exactly means. And I think there's something really important that if we are not able to practice what we preach for the external, we will not see things. We will not be aware of them. We cannot pass it on to our children. We will not be able to have a balanced recognition and then approach. And so it leads me to the necessity of truly learning the practices, the exercises, the disciplines that we have as knowledge of humanity. There are many cultures, many traditions that have looked at this question for way longer than the age of the industrialization. And they have found ways to look what it actually takes to nourish, to create, nourish, and evolve this awareness. And so for me, there cannot be this beautiful creation, what we're bringing together, if we're not in the same vein, also having and I'm going to be structured, a concrete plan of how we can bring this, nourish and exercise and practice this awareness. And then I think there's trust. To also say, when we do this, we should trust that with that process, we will take the right decisions. And maybe we will go wrong here and there, but that's in the end for me how we create and live culture.
Wonderful thing. A logistical point. We have 14 minutes, so technically, if imagine the three of you and you want to make a closing statement, quote unquote, do you also want to?
Yes.
I have maybe like 2 words, but I understand that time is the essence. But just like 2 words.
Perfect. And do you want to speak them? Okay, please. Is now a good time? Yeah?
I mean, I will definitely not talk like this. No, actually, I'd like to go at the end if that's all right.
At the very end. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
I think
Please.
because building on what Mohammed has said, and I mean, we are in a lot of coherence already because we've been spending our lives together over the last 14 years and learning to appreciate the differences in one another and how we can learn from and with one another. And so instead of, starting as a friendship, moving into something that is much closer to brotherhood or is brotherhood, and building things in sandcastles together and basically saying, how can we invite other people into that sandcastle and build with us? So we are already very aligned on a lot of these things. And this learning from cultures before, so learning together, is where I see very concrete opportunity for us to say, do we want to go into a shared practice, like being a community of practice in terms of being the entrepreneurs that are in this group, not only men, but also women, leaders, where we say we are coming together once a month. And there's, I don't know who is familiar with Entrepreneurs Organization, the biggest organization of entrepreneurs in the world. Not very impact or regenerative, but the concepts that they have in terms of coming together once per month for a 4-hour session, and everybody goes through what we call 5% reflection. So 5% most negative emotions, 5% most positive emotions. What triggered these emotions, and why is this significant for me? And we can use this as a shared learning space to say, okay, hey, now I'm having this challenge on a business level. I'm having this challenge on a romantic level. And we can really like peer coach one another on these topics where maybe one of us emerges also as an authority because they've maybe done more work or have more experience in that space. And through that, we actually create more awareness and can bring differing perspectives together to find solutions. The second thing that I think is a very concrete next step is I see this, maybe this is what Coherence TV or Coherence Studio is going to do. Victor is not here, but really like looking at this as reality TV, like how vulnerable can we be in these spaces of being recorded and witnessed in our process of figuring it out. Also with the things that we fuck up, because if we say, hey, we're getting together and we're trying to solve exactly the question that you asked Nesma, right? We might not have someone here, but if we broadcast that conversation, we say, this is our vision, this is what we're trying to do. We really don't know how to crack this topic. And this signal gets spread. There's someone in the world that says, hey, I've been working on this for 20 years. I can tell you, here are ways to do this, And these people will find us because of the vision that we're pursuing. And so we just need to kind of broadcast this out and be our most authentic selves in the process. And then the people will come to us and want to help us. And then it's more of a way of how do we recognize their contributions. So those are two things, and then the third thing for me is looking at, in order to do these two things, how much resources do we need for that? And do we think we already have these resources in our current bank accounts? Because I believe we do. And when we do the first thing, the reality TV, and I mean, third thing is I would already have these joint fundraising demo days, where we're moving closer together. I believe we might say, hey, maybe right now all we need is 500K, because the 500K will allow all of us to pay the salaries for the core people to continue figure things out over the next 4 months or 6 months, so that we then have a coherent story that we're able to tell, etc. So those would be my offerings, so to say, or invitations. And with that, I'm closed. Sorry if I overtook more than 3 minutes.
Please.
Yeah, I think that this can only work if we operate at a high level of integrity and trust between us, right? We all say that. I think it needs to be real, as in not just words, but real in action, and seeing where the tensions are, and if there are tensions, really expressing them, avoiding all of us to lose time in one direction or the other. So I don't think we should force anything, it's a flow, right? And it has been a bit like intense these 3 days, right? And you're like, okay, let's go, let's do it. So I think there's a reason, there's a flow that we need to follow, but always being able to give the signal to the other, actually that still works for me. Or it's, like there's something that is not quite right and I want to solve it, or I want to diverge, or I want to, because the worst situation I think for us would be to prepare all these things and then realize, oh, actually that was not what I envisaged, or I didn't understand your proposal, or this type of stuff. So I really encourage us to be genuine, like completely genuine, transparent, and there's no game between us. There's no need to, just need to say what we feel, and in any direction that will be okay.
We have around 8 minutes just for you to know.
Okay. Well, when we're talking about culture, I heard the word myth come up, and being able to see things that we might not be seeing right now. And when I hear seeing, I actually hear feeling. Right? I hear that kind of full body realization of the thing, and I love what you said about the leadership or the entrepreneurs methods, and still it reminds me also that that's so cerebral in many ways. Even if it's talking cerebral, like even if it's talking about emotions, it's still that talking. And in all these spaces, also here even, and of course we danced and so on, but it's a lot of talking. And when I think about the organizations, it's in Zoom, disembodied talking, and I wonder if there is a way for us to create new myths and to enact those myths through dancing, singing, or just ritual enactment. Not sure if that can be done on Zoom, but certainly in these type of places where we actually get to live these new ideas, or these seeds of new will take on bounties, but the bounties only get paid once the result is achieved. So that the people that are making those decisions on what are we going to do, they're on the line for that. If they don't make it, then they're not actually getting the reward. But at the same time, they will then only do the things that their heart says is the right thing. Because otherwise, why would they do it? It's not like, oh, my boss said it, so I'm just going to do it. And it's that interplay with those that might need to show responsibility to the investors that I think can bring this in. The other component, very, very strongly, I believe, is culture. how can we create a culture where this intuition that, by the way, men have as well, if they really choose to access that, how can that be brought up on the forefront and be there in the communal meetings as we interact together, and there's that place so that we feel safe to channel that.
And that's what I understood from what you were saying as well. If something is created with that intention or with that design, that creates a culture, or is an energy that is already there, which kind of expels certain players and attracts others.
That's sensitized.
In some way, I mean, I think that a lot of people in the non-profit sector have told me that come out of that is that they can't get anything done because they all, have, we want to make the world better and they have all these good intentions, but then ultimately when it gets to actually doing things, it gets stuck. And so I think that good intentions is not necessarily good culture.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's, where do we find, as you said, the balance within ourselves to be able to move between one and the other. I think this is...
Okay, it's 2 words. It's relational intelligence. And so, I think this conversation, actually there's so much things that I'm processing and want to share, so bear with me, guys, because this is so rich, and I think you all opened up and co-created this very layered narrative and story, which was kind of if we take the reality TV shows thing, seeking coherence, and then there's all of these parts, and I thought part of coherence is making sense of all of it. And then now going back to relational intelligence, okay, and to the importance of, as you were saying yourself earlier, the importance of defining semantics in order to create also a bridge to understand what we're talking about. As I'm reflecting a lot on intelligence, especially in the age of artificial intelligence, and if on the idea that if intelligence is not ultimately our most prized trait, then what is, and what is intelligence and what is artificial intelligence, bear with me again, then it becomes an opening up on the conversation of what is intelligence and how does intelligence work and evolve. And I think that personal intelligence is relational, and I think that life in general is relational. And so while we may isolate it and think in silo, everything is truly always in relationship, whether it is the air that we breathe, with the trees and the oxygen, even though we experience them as separate, there is a symbiosis that happens all the time with the light and photosynthesis, with us, with the nutrients on our planet, and potentially with the way that our intellect and including our consciousness works or emerges, and potentially that gets also disposed to the way that emerges a machine, right? And now I'm going into a recursive hole, but recursion might also be, one of the core needs in order for consciousness to emerge, and it doesn't have to make sense, but then does it all make sense? Which brings it back to the conversation between energy and masculine, and eventually finding that kind of polar and polarity. So this is a really kind of layer, just like your conversation, invitation to reflect on relational intelligence, and I think the way to find coherence in this group, in this conversation, and maybe as a whole, is right, because relational intelligence allow further connection, right? So from your intelligence to this intelligence to your intelligence and your intelligence and your intelligence is actually not separated, it's interconnected. And so how can we approach one another and understand it, even though we might speak slightly different languages? So that's it.
Wonderful.
Thanks, guys, for going with me on that.
My closing sentence is I find it beautiful how the larger context that we've started with 2 days ago, and 2 days ago, and the tech layers, we have those two now kind of mapped out, or at least on a whiteboard. We have a financial coherence first, something here, and some notes on cultural coherence. I find this has been a very rich gathering. So,
Definitely. Yeah.
And I would just say to Ruben, the really last piece, to what Ruben was talking about embodiment, and to the larger conversation about coherence. it's like I wasn't there at the beginning. I just kind of came in at the end, but I've been reflecting on coherence as well, and so coherence is also that at all states, right? From the body to the mind to the emotion, and how do we find that coherence? And from a very biological and physiological standpoint, there is, like heart-brain coherence, because the heart has an electromagnetic field. Anyways, I'm sure everyone knows here, yada yada yada. So I think from the heart to the brain to the spirit to the body, how do we find coherence? And then to the relational world that we live in, because we're not separate, we're interconnected.
Can I, based on that, share feedback for this round and an invitation?
There's the next steps. You've invited.
Still do next step? I thought we already had defined them.
Okay, I'm gonna.
It's okay. You're gonna flow.
Then I'm gonna summarize them.
I thought this was the closing round, but cool.
Right, then I'm gonna summarize.
Do it.
What I've heard from you, Ruben, was like using the mind to map the non-starters, which is important for collaboration. We have here, I would argue, the heart for the region culture, and both the intrapersonal integrity, etc., as well as the relational intelligence for the interpersonal. And then finally, what I've heard from you was, and just to build on that, there could be, how I think is like you suggested something very concrete, namely there's a call once a month that someone is hosting for this community. That's what I've heard. Someone could set that call up in a Zoom room.
Or check for who wants to be part of such a process.
Exactly.
Like commitments.
And finally, you've also suggested that there could already be demo days in the locations that we have touched on.
Amsterdam, 29th of September.
Perfect. So with that,
already happened. Okay. You're all invited.
Awesome.
Cool.
29th of September. Perfect. With that, I feel like I've done my duty.
You have.
It was really good.
As the feedback I wanted to share just briefly. I mean,
For sure.
one for Jakob. I love how, just witnessing your journey from the beginning of this gathering to now, how you emerged and stepped into your power with this, and this mind map, what you just did on the side while we were all talking, really incredible. Thank you so much for this. I think I have never been on a conversation or panel where the closing statements, I fell in love with every one of them, where I was like, wow, this is just there's so much richness in that, what everyone shared, because they were also, I felt they were much more shared from here than from here. So thank you for that. And the invitation is that because we've been all the way here, that we now start practicing the culture for the rest of the gathering, starting tonight with a shared dinner, and then a shared singing circle where we really can come into coherence on an embodiment level, and we actually do the singing together for everyone who wants to be part of it. So I would love for this group to let the news travel and try to see, can we create a collective moment of one collective dinner at this gathering where we're all there, everyone who wants to be part of it, and then start coming together for the singing circle. That's the invitation.
Thank you.
Our time?
Time? No, dinner is probably
Our time.
now.
We're bringing. No, at what time do you want to